What is it like when one's grief reaches its peak? Because of an accident, he and his wife were separated by 2 roads. When he woke up from the hospital, his father-in-law told him about his wife's death with red eyes. But he was unusually calm. He stared calmly at the hospital bed where his wife was being resuscitated, calmly wiped off the blood on the toe of his shoe, calmly went to the vending machine to buy more food, and calmly watched as the food got stuck in the slot. At his wife's funeral, mournful music echoed around the room. Friends and family held each other up. There were sobs of sadness, but it all seemed a bit pompous and contrived to him. He couldn't help but think that it was probably because he had never loved his wife, that he couldn't feel the pain of losing someone he loved. He got out of the car with a blank face, closed the door with a blank face, attended his wife's memorial service with a blank face, watched with a blank face as people recounted their sad and noisy eulogies. It wasn't until he noticed that the people around him were always looking at him from time to time that he realized that his blandness didn't fit in with the atmosphere of the place. So he went to the mirror and forced himself to make a sad face. But he tried for a long time, but there were not a few tears in his eyes. This comical behavior drew laughter from the children and convinced him that he had never loved his wife. When we were young, we always wondered why the adults laughed and laughed at the funeral, and why they raised their glasses at the dinner table. At that time, we really wondered if the death of a loved one was just a ridiculous farce for the adults. It was not until I grew up that I realized that when the glasses of adults clashed together, what was heard was the echo of a broken life. The day after the funeral, he went back to work as usual. Everyone stared at him in amazement. He should have rested, but he didn't. He was more focused and passionate than ever. His father-in-law, who was always serious, begged him with tears to leave his work behind. His father, who was usually indifferent to him, showed him care in the name of helping him with the garden. He found it absurd and ridiculous. He didn't feel any sadness, but everyone thought he was pretending to be strong. Slowly, something strange happened to him. He began to unconsciously catch some details that he had never paid attention to in the past. The tangled hair on his wife's hairbrush, the squirrels playing by the side of the road while waiting for the red light, and even the accidentally collapsed tree by the side of the road attracted his attention like a magnet. It all seemed like a metaphor to him. He felt like the tree that had been uprooted, and like the hurricane that had uprooted it. He felt that someone was always watching him, but he didn't know where they were hiding. He began to talk to strangers, consciously or unconsciously. Even a man he'd been bored with, he'd go to talk to him. But as the conversation went on, it always went astray. He said, "I never loved my wife." The man was shocked by his words. He knew it was a sad thing to say, but he didn't feel any sadness or grief at his wife's passing. The man inquired what he really felt. Probably the words touched his deepest sensitivities. He suddenly got up and pulled down the emergency stop lever on the train. The sheriff asked him seriously why he pulled the emergency stop lever, but his answers were disorganized. A police officer in charge of the investigation came forward and whispered the tragic news of the loss of his wife. The sheriff realized that behind this seemingly unusual behavior was an unspeakable sadness. Luckily, the incident did not cause any casualties, and the police only gave him a verbal warning before releasing him to go home. Sitting alone in his mansion, his eyes drifted to the conch on the dining table, which was his wife's favorite decoration, but he somehow found it a bit of an eyesore. He got up and opened the fridge and found a post-it note inside, on which was a message from his wife reminding him to repair the fridge. He didn't want to pay any attention to it, but his father-in-law's words haunted him. "You want to fix something? You have to take everything apart." He started to dismantle the fridge by hand, trying to fulfill his wife's dying wish himself. But he didn't know how to repair it. The fridge, which was only slightly sipping water, was quickly dismantled under his clumsy fiddling. Unexpectedly, however, he felt an inexplicable pleasure in looking at the mess. It was as if a traveler in the desert had seen an oasis, or as if a weed under the scorching sun had received rain. He fell in love with the feeling of destroying everything with his own hands. And once this feeling appeared, it was unstoppable. He took down the computer in his office, the creaking door in the bathroom. After putting his wife's favorite coffee maker in order, he realized that this simple dismantling could no longer suppress his inner urges. He needed a stronger stimulus, so he found a construction site and paid the foreman to let him in. He took a hammer and hit it again and again, giving vent to his unspeakable emotions. But the hammer was limited, so his workmates were kind enough to give him a sledgehammer. This sledgehammer seemed to have a kind of magic power and instantly ignited all his passion and vigor. As the workers watched this scene, they all agreed that this guy must be crazy, but only he knew that he was truly alive at this moment of recklessness. However, the price for all this recklessness had already been marked in secret. The next day, he went to the construction site to continue the demolition of the house, during which he accidentally lost his footing. A nail pierced through his foot, and the pain was so intense that he couldn't help but scream. When he pulled out the nail, he felt very comfortable. He cursed the pain, but enjoyed it. What will he do next? Does he really not love his wife? I'm a BullDog Movie. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, comment and subscribe to my channel. See you in the next video.